Imagine waking up one morning to find every ATM in your country frozen. Banking systems are offline. Emergency services can't communicate. Traffic lights are stuck on red. Hospitals are losing power. And nobody has fired a single bullet. This isn't some dystopian movie plot. This is the reality that NATO member Estonia faced in 2007 when it became the target of one of history's first coordinated cyber attacks against an entire nation. For 22 days, waves of digital assaults crashed government websites, paralyzed banks, and shut down media outlets. Estonia's entire digital infrastructure ground to a halt. And here's the kicker. It happened because they moved a statue. That's right. A World War II memorial was relocated in the capital city of Tallinn, and suddenly, the country was under siege. Not from tanks or missiles, but from millions of malicious data packets flooding their networks from across the globe. Russia denied involvement, of course. But the message was crystal clear. In the 21st century, you don't need an army to bring a country to its knees. You just need a keyboard and an internet connection. Fast forward to today, and NATO, the world's most powerful military alliance, has fundamentally transformed how it thinks about warfare. At the 2024 Washington summit, NATO made a bold statement. Cyber attacks can now trigger Article 5, its mutual defense clause. That means a devastating cyber attack on one member could be treated exactly like a military invasion, triggering a collective response from all 32 member nations. Think about that for a second. A hacker in Moscow could potentially trigger the same response as rolling tanks across a border. So today, we're going deep inside NATO's cyber defense strategies. How does the world's most powerful military alliance defend against threats that are invisible, borderless, and constantly evolving? What happens when war moves from battlefields to fiber optic cables? And most importantly, is NATO actually ready for the cyber wars that are already happening? Let's dive in. To understand NATO's cyber defense strategy, we need to go back to that pivotal moment in 2007. Estonia is one of the most digitally advanced countries on Earth. They pioneered e-governance, digital voting, even digital citizenship. Nearly everything in Estonia runs online. It was, and still is, a glimpse into what the future looks like for the rest of us. But that digital advancement made them vulnerable. And in April 2007, after they relocated that Soviet-era war memorial, the attacks began. These weren't sophisticated hacks trying to steal data. These were DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. Imagine millions of fake visitors flooding a website simultaneously, overwhelming the servers until they crash. Now imagine that happening to your country's entire digital infrastructure, all at once, for 3 weeks straight. Banks couldn't process transactions, citizens couldn't access government services, news websites went dark. And Estonia, being so digitally dependent, essentially had its nervous system shut down. Estonia called for help. They invoked Article 4 of the NATO Treaty, which allows members to request consultations when they feel threatened. But here's the problem. NATO's founding treaty was written in 1949. Article 5, the famous "an attack on one is an attack on all" clause, talks about armed attacks, and in 2007, nobody was quite sure if a cyber attack counted as an armed attack. Estonia didn't get the military response it might have wanted, but something arguably more important happened. NATO woke up to the reality of cyber warfare. Within months, NATO established the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Tallinn. It became the alliance's brain trust for cyber defense, where military experts, government officials, academics, and tech specialists collaborate on defending against digital threats. And the lesson was clear. The next war might not start with an invasion. It might start with a mouse click. For years, NATO debated, can a cyberattack really trigger Article 5? It sounds simple, but it's incredibly complex. Article 5 talks about armed attacks. But what defines an armed attack in cyberspace? If hackers shut down your power grid, is that the same as bombing your power plants? If they crash your banking system, is that equivalent to an economic blockade? What about disinformation campaigns that undermine democracy? Where's the line? At the 2014 Wales Summit, NATO finally acknowledged for the first time that cyber attacks could trigger Article 5, but they were intentionally vague about what that actually means. It would be decided, they said, case by case, and that vagueness is actually strategic. NATO doesn't want adversaries to know exactly where the red line is. If Russia, China, or North Korea knew precisely what level of cyber attack would trigger a collective military response, they could operate just below that threshold with impunity. But here's where it gets interesting. At the 2023 summit in Vilnius, NATO leaders agreed malicious cyber activities could trigger Article 5 on a case-by-case basis, leading to a collective response. So in theory, a massive cyber attack on, say, Poland's critical infrastructure could trigger Article 5, and suddenly, the United States, Britain, France, Germany, all 32 NATO members, could be responding to something that happened entirely in the digital realm. And this is crucial, the response doesn't have to be symmetrical. If you hit us with a cyber attack, we might respond with a cyber attack, or we might respond with economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, or even conventional military force. NATO maintains strategic ambiguity about how it would respond, which keeps adversaries guessing. What we do know is this. According to Microsoft's 2024 Digital Defense Report, 70% of nation-state cyber attacks over the past year were linked to Russian operations, with China, Iran, and North Korea following closely. These aren't random hackers. These are state-sponsored cyber warfare operations, and they're happening constantly. Here's something most people don't understand about NATO and cyber defense. NATO itself doesn't have a massive cyber army sitting in some secret bunker. That's not how it works. NATO operates more like a coordination and command structure. The real cyber capabilities belong to individual member countries. Countries like the United States, Britain, Estonia, the Netherlands, they have sophisticated cyber defense and offense capabilities, and NATO's role is to coordinate those capabilities when needed. Think of NATO as the conductor of an orchestra, where each country is playing a different instrument. The conductor doesn't play every instrument. They make sure everyone plays together in harmony. At the 2024 NATO Summit in Washington, D.C., allies agreed to establish the NATO Integrated Cyber Defense Center to enhance network protection, situational awareness, and the implementation of cyberspace as an operational domain. This new center is a big deal. Its job is to create a shared picture of what's happening in cyberspace across all NATO countries in real time. When a cyber attack hits one member, all members need to know immediately. They need to understand the threat, share intelligence, and coordinate responses. But creating that shared awareness is incredibly difficult. Every country has different systems, different security protocols, different levels of technological sophistication. Getting 32 countries to share sensitive cyber intelligence requires trust, standardization, and infrastructure that didn't exist until recently. And there's another crucial element. NATO's 2024 framework explicitly encourages closer coordination between military cyber units and major tech providers, especially since cyber attacks are now officially a form of military attack. This public-private partnership is essential because most of the infrastructure that gets targeted in cyber attacks is unowned by governments. It's owned by private companies. The power grids, telecommunications, networks, banks, cloud service providers, they're all in the private sector. So NATO is working to create what they're calling the NATO Cyber Industry Partnership, which brings together defense officials and tech companies to share threat intelligence, coordinate incident responses, and run joint exercises. The idea is to build a firewall that isn't just governmental, but societal. So, is NATO truly ready for a full-scale cyber war? The truth is, the cyber war is already here. It's a low-level, constant conflict happening every single day. The real question is whether NATO can adapt fast enough to stay ahead of adversaries who operate without rules, without borders, and with increasing sophistication. The journey from the 2007 attack on Estonia to the 2024 Washington Summit shows a massive evolution in how the world's most powerful military alliance views conflict. The battlefield has expanded from land, sea, and air to include cyberspace. The weapons are no longer just bombs and bullets, but also bits and bytes. And the line between war and peace has become blurrier than ever. The decisions made in quiet meeting rooms in Brussels and Washington will determine the security of our increasingly digital world. The next global conflict might not be televised, it might just be coded. Want to know how NATO prepares for a full-blown cyber war? Every year, they run the world's largest and most complex cyber defense exercise. It's called Locked Shields, and it's absolutely fascinating. In 2024, nearly 200 participants from 18 multinational teams gathered to defend a simulated nation from relentless cyber. But this isn't just a technical drill. NATO creates a massive, realistic environment with fake countries, fake infrastructure, and fake networks. Then, they unleash the Red Team, a group of elite cyber attackers whose only job is to cause as much chaos as possible. The defending teams, or blue teams, have to protect a mix of civilian and military systems, from power grids to communication networks. But here's what makes it so realistic. It's not just about stopping hackers. They also have to handle the political fallout. Imagine dealing with media frenzies, answering to demanding political leaders, and navigating complex legal issues, all while your systems are under attack. It's a pressure cooker designed to simulate the fog of war in cyberspace. This year, the exercise focused on deepfakes, synthetic identities, and hybrid attacks. This is the future of warfare, a blend of cyber intrusion, AI-generated disinformation, and information warfare that's incredibly difficult to defend against. But something remarkable happened during the chaos. Instead of competing fiercely, the teams started forming coalitions, sharing intelligence and strategies to strengthen their collective defense. And that's the whole point. In a real cyber war, NATO allies must work together, sharing information in real time to survive. But exercises are one thing, real cyber attacks are another. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Russia. When it comes to cyber warfare against NATO, Russia has become the most aggressive state actor by far. They've mastered operating in the gray zone. launching damaging attacks that fall just short of triggering a full military response. Think back to 2015, Russian hackers shut down parts of Ukraine's power grid, plunging hundreds of thousands of people into darkness in the middle of winter. In 2017, the NotPetya malware attack, also attributed to Russia, caused over $10 billion in damage worldwide. It was supposed to target Ukraine but spread globally, hitting major shipping companies, pharmaceutical firms, and even hospitals. And just before the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Russian cyberattacks hit the Viasat satellite network. This not only disrupted Ukrainian military communications, but also knocked out the control systems for windmills in Germany, a NATO country. So why didn't NATO invoke its collective defense clause? Article 5. Because the damage to Germany was considered collateral, not a direct attack, and this is the razor's edge of modern conflict. Attribution and intent are incredibly difficult to prove. Russia knows this. They are constantly testing NATO's red lines, probing to see how much disruption they can cause while maintaining plausible deniability. It's not just Russia either. China has been conducting massive cyber espionage campaigns against NATO allies for years, stealing military secrets and intellectual property. North Korea attacks banks and crypto exchanges to fund its regime, while Iran targets critical infrastructure in the West. The threats are constant, sophisticated, and coming from all directions at once. Just as NATO was getting a handle on these threats, a new player entered the game and changed everything. Artificial intelligence. AI is transforming both cyber attack and defense. On the attack side, AI can automate the discovery of new vulnerabilities, craft personalized phishing emails that are almost impossible to spot, generate convincing deepfakes, and launch attacks at a speed and scale that humans simply can't handle. On the defense side, AI can analyze massive amounts of network data to detect anomalies, predict attacks before they happen, and even automate responses faster than any human security team. It's a full-blown arms race. As NATO develops AI-powered defenses, its adversaries are developing AI-powered weapons. To stay ahead, NATO launched Diana, the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. It's basically NATO's venture capital fund, partnering with startups and universities to fast-track cutting-edge defensive tech before their enemies can develop the offensive equivalent. But there's a darker side to AI in this new era of conflict: cognitive warfare. This is where AI-generated content, deepfakes, synthetic media, and personalized disinformation is weaponized to manipulate public opinion, erode trust in our institutions, and so let's imagine a deepfake video of a world leader declaring war, or AI-generated news stories designed to inflame social divisions. Suddenly, the battlefield isn't just servers and networks, it's a fight for truth and reality itself. So, how does NATO plan to pay for all of this? This is the part that rarely makes headlines. At the 2025 NATO summit, member states agreed to a massive spending increase, targeting 5% of GDP for defense by 2035. Crucially, a significant portion of this 1.5% of GDP will be dedicated to non-military security, with cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection at the very top of the list. This is a monumental shift. For decades, defense spending meant tanks, ships, and jets. Now, NATO is officially recognizing that bits and bytes are just as important as bullets and bombs. But there's a catch. Not all NATO members are on the same page. Some countries have world-class cyber capabilities, while others are just starting to build them out. And an alliance is only as strong as its weakest link. A single vulnerable member can become a backdoor for an attacker to hit the entire alliance. That's why NATO is pushing the Cyber Defense Pledge, a commitment from every member to meet minimum standards of security and resilience. It's about ensuring everyone locks their digital doors. Because in the interconnected world of the 21st century, a threat to one is a threat to all. The future of warfare is already here, and it's being fought on a battlefield you can't see. We've talked about how NATO adapted to the digital age, creating a cyber shield for its members. But here's the thing. Despite all that progress, NATO is facing some massive unsolved challenges in cyberspace. These aren't just small hurdles, they're fundamental problems that don't have easy answers. First up, attribution. When you get hit by a cyber attack, the biggest question is, who did it? In conventional warfare, this is usually pretty obvious. A missile comes from a specific location. A tank has a flag on it. But in cyberspace, it's a whole different game. Attackers are ghosts. They can route their attacks through dozens of countries, use stolen hacking tools, and even plant false flags to pin the blame on someone else. Without clear attribution, how can you possibly respond? You can't invoke Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause, against an unknown enemy, even when intelligence agencies are pretty sure who's behind an attack. Proving it in a public, legally sound way to justify a military response is incredibly difficult. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Second, there's the issue of speed. Cyber attacks happen in milliseconds. Blink, and it's over. The damage is done. But how fast does a government, let alone an alliance of 32 governments, move? By the time political leaders are briefed, hold emergency meetings, consult with their allies, and finally decide on a response. The initial attack is ancient history. The digital dust has already settled. NATO desperately needs to figure out how to make decisions at the speed of the internet without sacrificing the democratic oversight and accountability that's at its core. It's a classic tortoise and hare problem, but in this race, the tortoise always loses. Third, we have the murky world of international law. To put it bluntly, the rulebook for cyber warfare doesn't really exist yet. What officially counts as an act of war in cyberspace? Is it shutting down a power grid, stealing a nation's secrets, disrupting a stock market? What are the rules of engagement? Can you legally launch a preemptive cyber operation against an adversary you know is about to attack you? NATO is working hard to establish these norms and create a kind of digital Geneva Convention, but right now, there's no international consensus. It's the Wild West, and every nation is making up its own rules as it goes. And that brings us to the fourth major challenge, the classic dilemma of offense versus defense. NATO was born as a defensive alliance. Its entire purpose was to protect its members, not to start conflicts. But in cyberspace, the line between defense and offense is getting blurrier every day. Think about it. If an adversary is launching relentless attacks from a specific set of servers, what's the most effective defense? Is it just patching your systems and hoping for the best? Or is it taking those enemy servers offline? That action taking down the servers is an offensive cyber operation, so how aggressive should a defensive alliance be? At what point does active defense become preemptive attack? These are deep, philosophical questions the alliance is still grappling with, and the answers will define the future of digital conflict. So, with all these massive challenges, where does NATO go from here? What's the roadmap for the future? Well, the big shift is moving from a reactive defense to what's called proactive deterrence. The goal isn't just to block attacks as they happen. The new goal is to make the cost of attacking a NATO member so unbelievably high that our adversaries don't even try it in the first place. This means developing serious offensive cyber capabilities that can be used as a deterrent. It's about sending a crystal clear message to potential attackers. If you hit us in cyberspace, we can and will hit back, harder than you expect. It's the digital equivalent of don't start none, won't be none. This strategy also means working with the private sector more closely than ever before. Let's be real. Companies like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon control more of the internet's infrastructure than most governments. NATO is pushing for a future where security isn't an afterthought. They want secure and interoperable by design to be mandatory requirements for all digital technologies and services. The idea is to build security into the very fabric of our digital world, not just bolted on at the end. And of course, there's information sharing. This is a huge priority. The NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence is working to create systems where threat intelligence flows seamlessly and instantly between all 32 member countries and their private sector partners. Picture it like a collective immune system for the alliance. When one part of the body, say Estonia, detects a new virus, the entire system learns about it immediately and can develop antibodies to fight it off collectively. Speed and shared knowledge are everything. NATO is also expanding its network beyond the traditional members. Key partners like Finland and Sweden, who are now full members, but also countries like Australia, Japan, and South Korea, are being integrated more and more into NATO's cyber defense framework. Why? Because cyber threats don't care about geography or old alliances? A threat actor in North Korea can target a bank in Germany just as easily as one in Seoul. The digital battlefield has no borders, and maybe the most important piece of the puzzle is resilience. This is a change in mindset. It's about accepting that you will be attacked. You cannot build a perfect, impenetrable wall. So, the focus shifts from just defending networks to ensuring that our critical infrastructure, our society, can continue to function even while under attack. If a hospital gets hit with ransomware, can it still provide emergency care? If the power grid is compromised, are there backup systems ready to kick in? Resilience means building systems that can take a punch, recover quickly, and keep going. So let's bring this all together. The reality is, we are already living in the age of cyber warfare. This isn't some science fiction movie plot. It's happening right now, every single day. Cyberspace is a permanently contested battlefield. State-sponsored hackers are constantly probing the defenses of NATO countries, looking for a single weak spot. Criminal gangs are shutting down hospitals and pipelines with ransomware for profit, and sophisticated disinformation campaigns are trying to tear apart our trust in democratic institutions from the inside. In the face of this, NATO has transformed itself. It's gone from an alliance designed to stop Soviet tanks from rolling across European plains, to a 21st century organization defending against invisible attacks that happen at the speed of light. The decision to put cyberattacks under the Article 5 umbrella is genuinely historic. It means NATO now treats a major digital attack with the same seriousness as a conventional military assault. It means an attack on one member's digital infrastructure is an attack on all, and it forces adversaries to think very, very carefully before they cross that line. But as we've discussed, the challenges that remain are huge. Attribution is still a nightmare, the legal frameworks are still being written, and the technology is advancing so fast that today's cutting-edge defense can be obsolete tomorrow. So, there are a few ways to look at this. The optimistic view is that NATO is adapting remarkably well. It's investing billions in cyber defense, running incredibly sophisticated war games, building powerful public-private partnerships, and developing both defensive and offensive capabilities. It's showing adversaries that there are consequences. The pessimistic view is that our adversaries, especially authoritarian states, are moving faster. They're more aggressive, and they remasters of operating in that gray zone, conducting attacks that are damaging but are carefully calibrated to stay just below the threshold of a full Article 5 response. And NATO, with its need for consensus among 32 different democracies, is inherently slower to react than a single dictator who can act instantly. The realistic view is probably somewhere in the middle. Cyber warfare is a constant, unending battle. It's a high-stakes chess match where both sides are constantly adapting and evolving. NATO isn't going to win cyber defense once and for all. It's a continuous process of improving, innovating, and trying to stay one step ahead of the threats. What is absolutely clear is that the next major conflict between great powers will almost certainly have a massive cyber dimension, and it will likely start there. Before the first missile is fired, before the first soldier crosses a border, the digital battlefield will already be a war zone. Power grids, communication networks, financial systems, they will all be targets. And in that conflict, NATO's cyber defense will be absolutely critical, not just for winning the fight, but for ensuring that the foundations of modern civilization can continue to function. So the next time you hear about a major data breach or a ransomware attack, remember that this is the real battlefield of the 21st century, and alliances like NATO are on the front lines, working every day to keep those virtual walls standing. But I want to know what you think. Is NATO doing enough to prepare for this new era of warfare? Or are we underestimating just how vulnerable we really are? Should democratic alliances be more aggressive in cyberspace? Or is restraint the smarter strategy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If this deep dive into NATO's cyber strategy opened your eyes, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because understanding these threats is the first and most important step to defending against them. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there both in the real world and the digital one.